You could win my 1968 Chevy Camaro project car, and I'm going to tell you how. I'm also going to show you in this video how I took a beater and made it better on a budget. Because honestly, this car was pretty ragged when I first got it. But with a little elbow grease and a lot of labor and not a lot of parts, I was able to make the thing significantly less disgusting and honestly, kind of cool. It's the type of stuff you would normally do if you're gonna flip a car. But this time, yes, I am giving it away, hopefully to one of you watching right now. So if you're checking out this video between October 25th and December 9th, 2024, you're gonna wanna go to my website. It is shop.davidfreiburger.com. I'm gonna put the link in the description. I'm also gonna put it right here. And once you get to that website, you will find all of the rules to discover if you have the opportunity to get a chance to win this car. Meanwhile, watch the video, because how often do you really get a chance to own a Survivor early Camaro? And I'm gonna show you everything that I know of that's wrong with it. This is the 195th car that I've owned in my life. And the thing is, I really didn't need another early Camaro, but you know how it is. You gotta buy it when it's a deal, and if you fall in love with the story, you fall in love with the car. And here's the story. This Camaro has been around my neighborhood for more than 30 years. The guy I bought it from purchased it in 1990, and he wasn't a car guy at all. It was just his regular drive-around car, nothing special. Anytime something broke on it, he took it to his mechanic and had it fixed. So it's a really good Survivor, and it's really good and functional. It's got some new parts on it. Thing is, his mechanic retired and he couldn't find somebody else who could work on a carburetor, and so he sold it to me. Thing is, I really like the look of the car. I hope it's as good as I think it is. We'll be digging into it in this video. I'm gonna tell you all the information about it. You're probably gonna find out at the same time I do about Bondo, rust, mechanical problems, all of that. I will tell you this. The guy was asking $18,000 for the car, and I gave him $15,000. So argue it out in the comments. Is that just a normal deal? Was it a complete ripoff? Was it a screaming deal? I think none of us are gonna know until I really dig into it. But I will tell you this right now. It is a factory inline six Power Glide car. So I know that knocks it down just a little bit. All right, I'm gonna head out and start to clean it up. I've never driven this car more than 10 or 15 miles total. When I got it, the odometer was a less than 52,000 miles, and now it's 52,004. The thing I've already realized about it is that six-cylinder is kind of peppy. Obviously, it's not a 327 or anything, but it's not undrivably gutless. The brakes work pretty well. It's manual steering and manual brakes, four-wheel drum brakes. The interior is pretty trashed. I'll show you that when I get to cleaning it up. The seat is not too bad. One thing I find about early Camaros is they always have less room in them than I expect them to. They're not as leg roomy as you would like. I think I would move the seat back if I had my druthers. It's funny, I really don't consider myself a Camaro guy, but I end up having a lot of them. There's this one, the 67 Crusher Camaro. I have another Camaro that is trashed. It's a 67. And then of course the F-Bomb, and the Land Speed car that I've driven actually belongs to Keith and Tanya Turk, but a lot of people associate it with me. That's an 80 Camaro. This car has two gauges. The factory fuel level gauge, I don't know if it works, and an aftermarket water temperature gauge, which right now says 170, which is good because it's about 95 outside right now. It is hot. Steering is a little loose, but not bad. Oh, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go weigh it. My local recycle center has a scale you can just drive on. What do you think the Camaro weighs? Completely bone stock, six-cylinder automatic, lightweight rear, no air conditioning, no power steering, no power brakes. all the glass, steel wheels. I'm guessing 3,200 pounds. What do you think? I'm approaching my local recycle center where I'm going to weigh the Camaro. Okay, I have a feeling the LED readout is going to blink on video, kind of like digital staging lights do at the drags. It says 1.59, and that's in tons. So 2,000 pounds times 1.59 is 3,180. 3,180 with me in it. This thing weighs, let's call it 3,000 pounds, or 2,980 with me. Wow, that's pretty good. I should have guessed lighter. I should have known. I always guess light, and then I'm wrong. So this time I guessed heavy, and I was wrong. All right, now I'm gonna go knock the dirt off, probably kill 10 pounds. The car is washed. You know, when it was all wet, it probably looked nice and shiny on video and probably pretty good, but unfortunately, it revealed some badness. So I'm on my way home and I'm gonna show you all that stuff and see what I can do about it. I'm back, and now we're ready to have a look at everything wrong with the paint. But first, let's talk about what's right with the paint. This car came from the factory in a color called British Green, and I know that because the data plate on the firewall has the paint code Z, which is what that is. British Green was actually a Corvette color for 1968, and it was a color used in 1968 only on the Camaros, and they only painted about 6% of them that color. They made a little bit more than 235,000 Camaros in 1968, so 6% of that is a little bit more than 14,000 cars that are in this color. So it's not rare, but it's pretty cool. And this car's been repainted a couple times, but this is pretty close to the original British Green. Now, the first thing I noticed that is way wrong about this is this whole side of the car is shinier than that whole side of the car. And it looks like this side of the car has been clear coated and this side has not. So obviously this side has been completely repainted separately from that side, and you can really tell. Here's the problem that brings me, is that I'm gonna Comet wash the car. You knew it was gonna happen. I'm gonna scrub it, I'll show you the details of that later. The question is, will the Comet wash end up dulling down the clear coat to match the satin? Or am I gonna have to try and polish the satin to match the clear coat? I'm not sure either thing is gonna happen. Before I get into the Comet wash, I'm gonna walk around and show you all the little stuff that's wrong with the paint. Because who knows? This car could be yours, and you gotta know. Here's another thing I noticed right away. When they painted the car, they painted the grille. It's green. That's totally wrong. They even painted over this part of it. It's supposed to look like that, and it's green. And of course, the green is flaking off the silver here too. So I'm either gonna have to buy a new grille or just spray can this one. All across the hood, you can see there's just a bunch of chips and stuff. Things like this are honestly all over the car. Here on the top, it's just sort of thin with patina. That's okay, but it does have a big scratch. This gets into kind of the bummer part of it. You can see that this is all cracked in here, and that looks deeper than paint. That might be Bondo. You can see over here on the quarter panel, it's even worse. But you know what? It could just be thick paint. It continues all down the quarter. There is a little bit of evidence of rust around the rear window. It did leak into the trunk when I washed it, so that's probably worse than it looks. Then you go over here to the trunk lid. You can see there's more cracking. Actually, if you sight down the trunk lid, which you probably can't see in video. Oh yeah, you can right there. See, there's a lot of bubbles in the paint. That's the worst spot on the trunk right there. You can see all those bubbles. That's probably paint just about to come off. Here is where it's real obvious that one side has clear coat and the other one does not. Right here on the passenger side door is the only evidence of rot that's coming all the way through. There's a bit of a whoop-de-doo in the body line right there on the driver's side. And right here on the driver's side quarter, you can see that there's a pretty good scuff mark and obviously a little bit of Bondo over here. The paint and body situation is not great and it's not terrible. Perfectly good for a beater in my opinion, but not awesome. I'll find out more once I get underneath it and see what's going on with rust in the floor pans. But first, I'm gonna start to experiment with what I might be able to do here with a Comet wash. Here are the basics: Comet, or any kitchen cleanser, barkeeper's friend, whatever you like, and a scrubby sponge. You need the kitchen sponge with the Scotch-Brite on the back. And what I do is scrub with abandon. Usually this will take off rust, little stains, light oxidation. What you want to do though is test whether you can get away with using the scrubby side or whether you're just going to use the soft side. Right now, I am going to test both on the dull part and on the shiny part. Here's what happened with my experimentation. The first thing I did is scrubbed both the dull spot and the shiny spot with the soft side of the sponge. It basically didn't do anything. Next, I did the same with the scrubby side of the sponge, and that cleaned up the satin part of the paint and scratched the clear coat side of the paint. And then I did something unusual for me. I tried wax on the part of the paint that is satin, and that worked pretty well. So here's what I'm gonna do. Now that it's dusk, and it's not so hot, I am going to Comet wash the whole car using the scrubby side on the satin part and the soft side on the shiny part. And then if I'm feeling really ambitious tomorrow, I just may buff and wax the thing. You can always tell when it's clear coat or not, because when you scrub, you'll get paint color. It's turning all green up here. The thing is, I've never seen a successful Comet washing of clear coat, ever. It only tends to work on single stage. I'm going pretty light with the scrubby side here. Can you see how green my hand is? That's the paint coming off. If it had clear coat, it wouldn't do that. You can Comet your glass too. It can take off some like overspray paint and things like that. Smog deposits. On the inside, it'll remove nicotine. You can also do the stainless trim, although I do that with the soft side. I guess the one piece of advice would be, if you're gonna Comet wash your car, come near it with some Scotch-Brite and a scrubby sponge. Make sure you don't particularly care about the paint. Don't blame me later if it doesn't come out good. Test it in an inconspicuous area. All those disclaimers and stuff. And when you drop the sponge on the ground, make sure to hose it out. I wouldn't say it's universal though. It's not making a massive difference in this car. In some cars, it makes a huge difference. So I'll keep on going like this, and at the end, I'll have to wash the whole car all over again to get all the Comet dust off of it. And now, in the light of the day, we get to find out exactly how well my Comet wash worked. And I would say it performed exactly as expected. There's some very light sponge scratches on the satin part of the paint, and none over here because I used the soft side. But what it did is it gave it sort of an even burnish. It took off a lot of little rust specks and a lot of stains, a lot of bird poo. On that side over there, the best thing I did is get rid of a whole bunch of goop that was in the dent on the left rear quarter panel, so that looks way better. And it also just gave it a nice, smooth, burnished satin finish. Now, I was thinking last night real hard about what to do from here. I warned you that I might even wax the thing, but I realized that wax is gonna stick in all the little cracks in this paint, dry white, and always be there and look worse. So I thought to myself, should I use some of that patina juice stuff? Should I make it really shiny? Should I use the Vice Grip Garage ATF trick? And then I realized it's got just enough cracks and chips and dents in it that that's only gonna make it look worse. So what's the ultimate answer? You guessed it! I'm gonna do absolutely nothing. The paint is what it is. It's forever going to be nice and satin on this side and shiny from here over. I guess when I go to the snooty shows, I'll park this side out. Anyway, let's move on to something that I'm actually good at instead of paint care. Let's have a look at the engine. And there it is. The inline six. You know what? I have to say that I have loved every single one of these engines that I've had. More by far than the Mopar Slant 6, by the way. Of course, this is the second engine family of Chevrolet inline sixes. The first was 1929, I think, to 1962, and that's the one that's called the Stove Bolt. People call these a Stove Bolt, but they are not. Instead, this is the second engine family. It was introduced in 1962 in the Chevy 2, or what we now call a Nova. Now, in that car, you could get the Super Thrift 4-cylinder, which is this same engine minus 2 cylinders. Actually, it was the same as the 194 cubic inch engine, which was called the High Thrift. After that, let's see, they had the 194, then there was the 215 Pontiac that was based on this engine family, then the 230 and the 250. And the Pontiac also had an overhead cam version of this in both the 230 and 250 cubic inch displacements. It's interesting, I heard recently that the deal with that is that John DeLorean was so infatuated with European racing, which is why the GTO was called the GTO, that he wanted that overhead cam thing going on for Pontiac, and that's why the Sprint overhead cam inline sixes came in those Pontiacs, and they're based on this same engine family. Now, in 1968 here, this car would have had the baseline 230 cubic inch turbo thrift motor in it with 140 horsepower, but instead, this one was optioned with a 250 cubic inch engine, which makes 155 horsepower and 235 angry pound-feet of torque. Now, what's interesting is when I got this, the guy told me, yeah, I think I had a later engine swapped into it. But I looked, and this is actually the numbers matching original engine for this car. And I know that because there is this pad here right by the distributor that has numbers stamped in it. And I looked up those numbers and I used my Googles and I found out that this was the original numbers matching engine, and it's a 250 cubic inch engine, and that stamping also tells you that it originally came with a Power Glide behind it. So that's what I got here. Runs pretty good. I think what I'm going to do is probably first clean it up, pressure wash it, just make it nicer. Looks like maybe somebody has spray painted the inner fender wells and firewall and stuff. Maybe I can make it prettier. And I'm gonna go through and do a compression check on it, put plugs in it. Looks like somebody put wires on it pretty neatly, I might say. And I don't know, just tune it up and see what we get. Okay, now I have all the grime on my driveway instead of the engine, which is how I like it. I think it's pretty good. All right, now that I got the ignition system all wet, let's pull the plugs. The first thing I'm noticing here is that this engine has obviously had a valve job. I can tell because the short block is still like grimy original orange, and you can see that the cylinder head and side covers and valve cover have all been painted in fresh Chevy orange. So that means somebody's been in this, and it runs pretty good, but I still want to run a compression check and see what we get. So I'm going to be removing all the spark plugs, and then I will spin it over and see what we got in each cylinder. Wow. That was in there. Come on, loose. Wow. Okay. Here's what I'm seeing in the spark plugs. No real surprises. None of them have any disasters going on, but this is indicative of the design of an inline-6 intake manifold where the carburetor's in the middle and you've got two end cylinders with really long runners and then two middle cylinders right next to the carburetor that are getting most of the fuel. You can see the cylinder number 1 is the leanest. Then you've also got cylinder number 2 kind of lean, cylinder number 3 pretty okay, then really rich on 4, really rich on 5, and 6, it's rich. I don't know. Gravity? Accelerating? Fuel all going to the back? I don't know. I'm making stuff up. My biggest concern here is number 5. That has really got the most soot on it, but as I left the plugs out of the engine, they all dried off, which means that it's not oil. So there's nothing I'm going to do about that except put in new plugs after I do my compression test. And look at my compression tester, vintage. The Hansen Company in Paw Paw, Michigan, P-A-W, and mint. Made in USA. This thing's really great. The only problem is because it's vintage, the tip is pretty hard. I may have to wrap tape on it or something, but let's see what I can do. I will hold the compression tester in the cylinder with one hand as I arc my starter with another. Whoa! I don't think my Schrader valve's working. Ha! That's violent. Wow. Okay then. I can't even hold it on the cylinder. Maybe the 256 is just that good. Let me see if I can lean into it a little more. Nope. I think the Schrader valve is not letting the air into it. I might have to change that. All right, that was a fail. Guess what? I need to go buy a compression tester. I didn't have to buy one. I found my newfangled compression tester with the separate hose. It's going to be pretty good. So, if you're unaware, what I am doing here is checking my cylinder pressure. And mainly I want to make sure that it's the same in every cylinder. What this tool does is allows the engine compression to pump one way into the tool. It's a one-way valve in there so that air goes in but doesn't come out. And after you crank the engine over a few times, you'll see the needle going up, 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 and it'll stop at a certain point, and that's what your cylinder pressure is. And this engine is 8.5 to 1 factory compression ratio. I'll be super happy if it makes 90 PSI in every single hole, but we'll find out. The key is balance. You want all the cylinders to be the same because I don't expect to be impressed by the actual compression ratio. Okay, now I can crank it again and you will watch that dial jump. Whoa! How does this thing have 150 pounds? Yikes! I don't know how that would be. That's pretty impressive. Let's see if the other ones do the same thing. 165. Wow. Okay, kind of mind blown here. Let's keep going. Wow, that's wild. 150. I need to look up cranking compression and see if I was way out of line on what it should be. Another 150. And will the last one be a winner? Yes. Wow, 150 pounds in every hole. This thing's stout. I don't even know what to do. I expected much worse. Well, let me throw some new plugs in it and decide where to go next. Now I'm done with the compression check. Let's look over the engine at some other stuff that I learned here. First, brand new master cylinder. Second, brand new alternator down there. I noticed the starter is new. Obviously the spark plug wires, the cap. I assume the rotor, I haven't had it apart. Maybe the points are new as well. Let's see what's going on under the air cleaner. This should be a Rochester monojet. Yes, that's what that is. One barrel carburetor. And honestly, it looks pretty clean. I think I'm gonna tighten it down onto the manifold, maybe fiddle with a little bit, probably carb clean it. And that's probably it for the engine compartment. Believe it or not, I am not into hopping up inline sixes. In my experience, you do nothing but ruin them when you start to throw cams, headers, intakes, all that stuff. All you do is kill that smooth, pleasant engine noise, you kill the mileage, and you kill all the bottom end torque. So to me, you leave an inline six stock. Here's a problem. People changed a whole bunch of things, but not the air filter. I cannot see a speck of light through this at all. That is junk. Think that's why the plugs were really rich? There are no coincidences. So I'm gonna change that. And I should probably also do an oil change on this thing. Oil in. I am using the Valvoline VR1, which is kind of my go-to. It's a racing oil, which this doesn't need because of no racing, but it does have zinc in it, and this does have a flat tappet cam, and so it does want the zinc. And I don't know about the diesel oil thing, so I'm just doing this. And yes, I filled the filter too. Let me check the dipstick and not overfill this pooch. I fired up the Camaro in order to circulate the oil so I could get a dipstick reading, and I noticed that the monojet is leaking. You can't have your Camaro burning to the ground, can we? Let's see what we can do about that. It is this fitting right there. Hopefully I can just cinch it. Oh yeah, it's way loose. Way loose. Let me fire it up and we'll see if that fixed it. Done. Here's my old oil filter. I'm gonna do something that's usually reserved for my race engines as sort of a diagnosis, but I thought it'd be interesting to see what kind of condition the 6 is in the Camaro, so I'm gonna cut the filter open and inspect the filter material to see if there's any metal in it. You can buy this tool at Summit. I believe this might even be a Summit brand tool, and it just works like a can opener. You spin it around, tighten it. Spin it around, tighten it. And eventually the can is gonna pop open and you can pull the filter element right out. Okay, that made only the average amount of mess. I always get oil everywhere. But I'm able to use my thumbs and separate the filter material in this and see that there's dirt. There's even some sludge a little bit, not much, but there's no metal, and that's the big win. No sparklies. Another reason why you're gonna be really happy with your new Camaro. Next up, I need a solution to this. Obviously, the paint is just chipping off the tail panel, but there's an easy answer. In 1968, all of the SS 396 cars had blacked out tail panels, so I can paint this black, and even though it's a 6-cylinder, it'll look kind of factory and okay. Actually, you know, not all of the SS 396 cars had the blackout treatment. There were some darker colors that didn't have it, perhaps even the British green, but I don't care, because it's gonna solve a cosmetic problem for me and appear kind of factory. I'm gonna remove the tail lights, get rid of the gas cap, obviously, and maybe remove the lock cylinder. I'm gonna leave the bumper on. Then I'm gonna chip all the paint off. I'm going to sand it. I'm going to etch primer it, then filler primer it, sand it again, and then satin black it, all with spray cans, because I don't have a paint gun. Actual body guys are probably horrified by what they've seen so far in my process here, and I'm probably gonna make it worse. I'm honestly the last guy you wanna learn paint and body from, but at least we're gonna find out if my low buck homegrown process is gonna work here. My next step is to use some spot putty. You can get this either as a 2-part epoxy or like this, just ready to use. And what it does is fills in little pinholes in Bondo, or in my case, some of the scratches I made by using way too rough 40 grit paper. So I'm just gonna use the spreader, slather some of this here and there, and then we will move on to primer. Okay, this seems like it'll work. Wow, it's so hot outside, it's already going off. Woo! It is 107 right now. So this is not really the best time to be doing this. Oh yeah, this is not gonna work. Wow. All right, I'm gonna have to sand that off and start over. Wow, that's bad. All right, I'm gonna come back this evening. Okay, this is it. As you can see, the sun is coming out. It's getting really hot out here. I think I'm gonna be okay though. This paint that I've got is SEM brand. I got it at a pro paint shop. I'm not just relying on hardware store stuff. It's by SEM. It is self-etching primer, provides excellent adhesion and corrosion resistance to properly prepped steel. Properly prepped. Okay, let's go. Well, there's my first pass with the etching primer. You can definitely see where I have not made this perfect. There's a bunch of scratches down here. I'm gonna hope that the filling primer I have is basically spray-on Bondo. That's gonna fix all this. But you can already get an idea of what it's gonna look like. I'm gonna let this dry completely and then come back and sand it. I took that etching primer, sanded it with 400. It still had a lot of scratches in it. And so I wax and grease removed it, masked it all off, wax and grease removed it again, and hit it with a whole bunch of that high build filling primer. And you know what? It was pretty good. There's still a bunch of sanding scratches down here. I just went way overboard with that 40 grit. But up here where it actually shows, it's pretty good. And I'm not even gonna sand the filler again. I'm going straight to the satin black top coat. That is good. To wrap up my nice new tail panel, I thought it would be great to have a fresh gas cap. Get rid of that ugly locking one that I had. And I decided, you know what? I'm just gonna get the super plain one because it's 28 bucks delivered, which is way cheaper than the other one. And then I try and install it, and it doesn't work. Junk. And so then I ordered the one that was pretty much 40 bucks delivered. Fortunately, after modifying this just a little bit, actually I could even say repairing that just a little bit, we have a fancy gas cap on the back of the Camaro. The question is, what do I do with that old cap that doesn't fit? Nice. Hey, just a quick interruption here. I do want to remind you that I am giving away this 68 Camaro in a sweepstakes. Go to my website, shop.davidfreiburger.com. All of the rules are there so that you can find out how you can get your entry. I hope one of you watching it today gets to win. Well, I've got the back of the car all dialed in. I think the tail panel looks pretty good. And now I'm moving on to the front. And I'm going to take the lazy way out here and change to a brand new grille. Problem is, this one's painted green, which I don't like. And also, I don't want to sand all of the paint off in between all these little slats because I'm never going to get it perfectly right. And this trim is all beat up, so I just splurged and went to eBay and bought the cheapest brand new 68 Camaro grille that I could find. So let me whip this one out of here, take the other brand new one, paint it black, and put her back. I think it's going to look sharp. And I'll also have to polish the bumper, get rid of the license plate, all that stuff. That's my old grille. This is the new one, which feels just a little bit more cheap and plasticky than the old one. And after the debacle of buying the wrong gas cap, maybe buying the right one and not having it fit, I inspected this very carefully to make sure that it was going to go in place of that one. And I might not have found everything, but I did find one thing, which is that the holes in the top of it for the fasteners, not only are they in a slightly different place, but they're different sizes. So what I'm going to do is oversize all the holes in the new one before I then clean it up and paint it. I oversized all of the holes in my new grille. I modified the ends of it to accept the headlight trim screws. I installed the brand new trim right here, which didn't fit awesome, but it looks pretty good. And of course, I painted the whole thing the same color black that I did the tail panel on the car. I'm finally ready to install the grille. Now that it's all apart, it's obvious that there was a row of fasteners down here that my car did not have because it's been taken apart and painted so many times. Maybe I won't need to use them again. Let's see how this goes. This came out at a pretty extreme angle. I want to push on the grill with a screwdriver, but I don't want to mar anything or dent. So I'm going to take some gaff tape and wrap it around the screwdriver to make it a softer implement of forcing. Okay. It came out this way, so I thought it might go in this way, but clearly I'm butchering things right now. Got it. Well, it seems like this is going to take a little bit of fiddling, and it's probably going to go into the night, and so I will just make it happen, and I will show you the results tomorrow. Good morning. Actually, it's not even that good. I fought the reproduction grill last night for a long time, and I finally got it in. But here's the problem. These upper and lower trim pieces have a different V shape than the grill itself. So you have to sort of mangle them in there. And then the screw holes up along the top didn't line up perfectly and were too small. I really should have oversized them more. But what that means is that this trim piece is sort of laid out like this because I had to tweak it to make that V shape match. But then the problem is these headlight bezels don't want to go on at all. Basically what it is these are that far apart and the grill is that far apart. And so it's a battle. You know, this is why I just hate dealing with paint and body and trim stuff. It's just not me. I want a good, complete car that I can play with engines with because this stuff drives me nuts. I don't know if I'm gonna have to buy a different reproduction grill or figure out how to just mangle it. It seems like you can't get there from here. So I don't know. I'll get back with you with the solution or not. I had to remove the grill, completely undoing everything that I battled for last night with the trim and all of that. It just doesn't work. And there's no amount of squashing, flexing, tweaking the grill that'll work because of the way it mounts in the car. So I'm gonna have to do what I was trying to avoid this whole time by buying a brand new grill. I'm gonna have to sand and paint my old grill and attempt to install it with my brand new reproduction trim. Let the sanding begin. Well, it's deja vu all over again as I install a grill in the Camaro, but not this grill that's reproduction that I paid good money for because it doesn't fit, therefore causing me to spend a bunch of time on exactly the job I was trying to avoid, which was sitting in my backyard trying to get all the old paint off the original grill. I scraped everything with a screwdriver painstakingly. Then I took sandpaper and got it in every single little hole in this grill, all of these slots. After that, I spray painted it, put the lights back in, and then I installed the reproduction trim. So what I'm going to attempt to do here is install my freshened up original grill with my new trim and headlight bezels. I've already test fit everything. I think it's going to work, but we'll find out. And done. That was a lot of needless work, but I think worth it. The grill is mint. Here's the question though. On the 67 and 68 Camaro, are you a bumper guy or a no bumper guy? The front bumpers sometimes can be removed from these cars and they actually look okay. I think that started in 67 or 68 with Trans Am racing. Think of the Sunoco Camaro or even Smokey Yunick's car. They had no front bumper. Drag racers started doing it as well, obviously to save weight. Personally, I'm a front bumper guy. How about you? Now the question is, what do I do with this old grill? Do I take it to the swap meet and sell the thing, recoup some of my losses? I would feel bad about that because then I'm just passing on a big problem to a fellow gearhead. What do I do? I can't believe I can't get this. And now I'm gonna put the Camaro Bumblebee stripe on the front. This was an optional stripe that was available in both 1967 and 1968. This is the stripe that was option code D90. It's just a Bumblebee right over the nose. And if it was a V8 car, it would have a cutout on the fender that had the call out for the engine displacement, but the 6 cylinders didn't. So this is just a one-piece stripe. There was also the D90 stripe, which is the one that goes over and then spears back along the door. That would typically be for an SS car. Thing is, the D91 Bumblebee stripe was in fact available on every trim level of Camaro, even the lowest possible lowly inline 6. And so I'm going to show you how to slap this thing on. Originally, the Bumblebee stripe was painted on, and I think we've already seen how me and paint get along, so I'm gonna go with a straight vinyl sticker. This is available from Phoenix Graphics. They also have the mask that you can use to paint the thing, but I'm just gonna stick the sticker on. First step is I'm just gonna clean up this whole area and try and get all of the gnats and dog hair off that I possibly can. This is just soapy water. Let's lay this out. You know, I'm trying to lay this thing out here, and unfortunately, gnats keep landing all over the car. As much as I waited and waited and waited for dusk on this, I may actually have to wait till morning to do this just because of the gnats. Man, I think what I'm gonna do is cut a pretty close line at the front of this decal strip so that I can really eyeball the distance off the nose of the car. The stripe should be closer to the front than it is to the hood line. Seems like it doesn't have enough V to it because there's so much space here and not enough here. I thought it would conform to the shape of the front of the car better. I'm gonna go do some research, look at some photos of these stickers, and come back in the morning with fewer gnats and mosquitoes. It's morning. Last night I wasn't able to stick the stripe on. I wanted to wait for a couple of reasons. First of all, I mentioned the gnats and mosquitoes and stuff that we're getting on the sheet metal and that we're gonna get underneath the sticker and look absolutely terrible. Second of all, it was actually too cool for the stripes, and it's not baking out here yet. It's not 110 degrees like it has been. And so the stripes are just in the sun getting a little bit more soft, which is going to help them out. And now I'm finally ready to go through the process of adding the bumblebee stripe. Let me show you how that works. Typically, I've been pretty good at this. Let's see what happens. Okay, what I'm seeing is this tape needs to be flexed back a little bit to make this line be the same distance, the full length of the sticker. And so to eyeball that, I think what I'm gonna do is take a piece of painter's tape and put it right here, perfectly in line with where it needs to be, which is, I think, right there. Let me measure. Yep, that is crooked. Wow, it needs to go back even more. I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to tweak it that much, but I can give myself a target by moving this where it needs to be. You see that big buckle in there? And then I can eyeball this like that. And now when I'm putting it down, I have a target to shoot for. I'm gonna try and fold it back as I go. That's gonna tend to put a big wrinkle right here, so I'm not gonna be able to get it all the way, but I'll give it a shot. All right, the stripe is officially coming off. I'm just done with this. I tried really hard to get the stripe down the side right here, and there's so many compound curves that it's impossible to stretch the vinyl to do what you want to do. If you have one of these cars, I would strongly recommend getting the masking kit for paint instead. And now it's gonna take me about an hour to remove this decal because it's stuck on there good. And my prediction, it's gonna pull some paint off when it comes off. So this is a debacle. Wow, this is gonna take a long time. You know what? I don't blame the graphics company here. It's probably a skill problem. I have done this super successfully before on flat surfaces, like the roof of my 72 Roadrunner or 71 Roadrunner, for example. And I've done bumblebee stripes on Mopars and not had this issue. But whatever it is, going over this edge, you can't curve this way and fold this way at the same time and not get a big buckle in the vinyl. Wow, this is gonna take a long time to get off. As I'm peeling this stripe off, I guess I don't feel too bad because the other thing about it is that it doesn't have enough V shape to it to match the shape of the valance here. And it's also supposed to be closer to the front of the car. You know, it doesn't match the exact shape of the leading edge of the hood, which is weird because it looks pretty close back here So that might be an installation problem. I used to be good at this. But then I started doing YouTube to make sure to show the whole world exactly how bad I am. This car is gonna look great with no stripe. Everyone's saying get out a heat gun. It's plenty hot outside. Surface of the car is hot, and so am I. Here's something I learned from that whole boondoggle. Over here where I used way too much water, there's tons of glue stuck to the car. Over here where I didn't use as much, there's almost nothing. How weird. And I only pulled up one rather significant chip of paint. Well, it's time to face the consequences of my actions here and try and remove all this goo from the front of the Camaro. But first, you will notice that Steve Dulcich and I have decided to take matters into our own hands. Look at that ticket right there. That's one that you can get behind. I might actually have these t-shirts still on sale when you see this video. If I do, I'll put the link right there. Now, I'm gonna do a shootout of all of these potential goo removers. I actually went on my Instagram and asked people, what do I do here? Because I advised them that the Goo Gone, this spit in the face of the Goo Gone. It didn't touch it. The WD-40 is a very common thing people say will remove goo. No way. Then I attempted some brake cleaner, wouldn't even do it, wouldn't remove the goo. And so now I'm going to try some other suggestions, the acetone and the goof off and the special wheel that you put on a drill that would remove a decal from a car. Well, I'm gonna find out if that will remove glue alone. It seems like it might be too sticky for the wheel. And then last resort, the gasoline. All right, let's see if any of this stuff works. I'm gonna start with the acetone. I'm actually gonna wear gloves. How weird is that? Oh, these are gross. I don't like wearing protective gloves, but I have absorbed a lot of automotive chemicals in my life, and it's probably gonna come back to bite me. Acetone. The other challenge here is that with all of this stuff, I need to make sure that I don't slop it onto my spray painted grill and remove the paint from the grill. That would be something that would happen to me. It won't take the glue off, but it'll take the paint off my grill. The glue doesn't even notice. It does not care. That is not doing anything. It laughs in the face of acetone. Let's see if the goof off will work. I've never tried this stuff before. That smells pretty serious. They do say with all this stuff, you should let it soak a little bit, so I'm not really using the prescribed methodology here. Ooh, this feels like it has some promise. Oh, it's removing all the paint though. Okay, that does have some promise, but it is removing paint. That would ultimately work. You can see how it's balling up. Yeah, see, that would come off, but it's also taken paint with it and making it look dull. So I'm gonna try the wheel. I've heard of these. I've never owned one or tried one. This is the wheel that is supposed to remove old decals from cars, like stuff that's been on there forever. This is fresh glue, so I don't know if it's gonna make a mess of it. I don't know if it's gonna wreck the paint. It does say max RPM 4,000 and the instructions said 1,500 to 2,000. I have no idea what RPM that this drill turns, and it doesn't say on it, does it? Oh, 1,800. Okay, we're good. All right, let's see what happens. That just seems like it would ruin stuff, doesn't it? All right, it smells like burning. It's throwing stuff everywhere. Oh, it's like a big eraser. Oh, it's like a giant pencil eraser. I had no idea. It's putting stuff everywhere. It is kind of taking it off. I just don't think my technique's very good. All right, that is getting it, but as I said, my technique is lacking. Oh, and it's also scratching it up pretty good, I think. Yeah, and I definitely am not gonna be cutting and buffing this paint later. All right, this is not my first choice just because of the risk of damage and my lack of knowledge on it. I don't hate it though. I'm just scared more than anything. It's actually not bad. Now that I've used the eraser just a little bit, I'm gonna see if one of these other products will take off the residue so that I can see if I'm damaging the paint or not. Let's go with the Goo Gone. It seems like our most innocent player. Okay, the Goo Gone is removing the light residue. I'll give it that. This might not be as hopeless as I thought it was. Well, it looks pretty good. I think I'm gonna use the eraser and follow it up with the Goo Gone to get the light stuff off. But let me give you a review on these products based on moments of research. First of all, brake cleaner, just too abrasive for the paint. I know it'll eventually cut through the glue, but it also takes a lot of paint with it. WD-40, better left for lighter duty stuff, and of course it leaves a residue. Acetone, this has been my old standby, but it couldn't touch the thickness of this glue. Acetone still has a lot of uses and it's fast drying and doesn't leave a residue, so I like it. All right, the Goof Off, this is a revelation to me. This is new goodness. It smells gnarly, which means it works. When I first touched it with the rag, it was actually eating through the glue. It was taking off too much paint, and that's why I didn't do it, but I want to reinvestigate this in the future because it was really good. Then the Goo Gone, I used to have zero faith in Goo Gone. Just recently, I used it on something and I was like, whoa, this actually works. In this case, it won't cut through the thick glue, but it does get through the light residue. And so once again, I'm going to erase and then Goo Gone. Oh, and by the way, I've got these plastic scrapers out here. Mike Cotton gave me a tip. Actually, a lot of people gave me a tip on unleaded gasoline for this, which, you know, far be it from me to recommend something that flammable and dangerous. But they said you can soak it with the gas and it'll goop up, and then you can scrape it with this and sort of move it off. But eraser. Okay, that full day waste of time is coming to a close. I obviously need to hose the car off because it's got all this stuff all over it. Then I can move on to the next mod, try and make this thing great for you. Okay, I'm not trying to make it great, I'm just trying to make it better. After that boondoggle with the stripe, let's do something that requires no skill. I'm gonna clean up this absolute sponge pit of an interior. It's pretty disgusting. You can tell the guy used the car every day, never cleaned it. There's sweat stains on everything, and there's just weirdness. Like, for example, this pad covered in dog hair. Blah. Get rid of that. Oh, now you can see that this dash pad looks almost homemade. This must have been installed back before they made reproduction parts. Huh, sort of covered in vinyl. All right, I'll get all of this cleaned up and vacuumed, but first thing, I have to get rid of that disgusting steering wheel cover. Well, this is vaguely interesting. This steering wheel and column did not come from this car. How do I know? Well, first of all, because it would have been gold, just like the dash from the factory, the Ivy gold color. Second of all, because this steering wheel has a horn cap that says SS350. I also know that whatever car donated the steering wheel did not donate the column. Why? Because it's column shift, which is a little bit interesting for a Camaro. Not super rare, but unusual. But what is unusual is that it's a column for a torque drive transmission. You may have never heard of this. In 1968, Chevy released the torque drive. Now, you may have heard of the Power Glide 2-speed automatic transmission. Well, apparently that was just too swank for some people, and they released the torque drive, which is a Power Glide that does not shift automatically. You had to shift between first and second constantly on the column. Now, I don't think this car came with the torque drive because the code is for a Power Glide, but even better, this thing's got a 3-speed in it. I assume it's a turbo 350. When I was driving it, I was able to count the shifts, and it's actually a 3-speed. So, fun trivia about the torque drive. Let me get this disgusting thing out of here. Now I'm just gonna clean it up. It's not gonna be good, just better and less gross. I didn't say not gross, I said less gross. I'm gonna use a little contact cement to reattach this piece. 1968 only. The 67 had sort of a pebble grain on there. That's all the scrubbing I'm gonna do. Next, I'm gonna cut off these horrible seat covers, vacuum the whole thing out, and then install some new cheesy seat covers. Are you ready for it? Cheesy saddle blanket seat covers. Yeah, I'm just trying to cover up the foam and make this something less than completely gross. You know, the odometer on this thing says 52,000 miles right now. What do you bet this car has 252,000 miles on it? I mean, think about it. It's had at least 3 paint jobs, and it had the original seat upholstery that wore out. Then it had this aftermarket upholstery that wore out. And then it had 2 seat covers that wore out. That's a lot of use. All right, I'm just gonna stretch these things on there and hope that it's good. Why am I doing this instead of the right thing? Well, you've met me, and also because I didn't find the Ivy Gold seat covers, like stock seat covers, in stock at the time I was doing this. And if I did, it would have been really expensive to put them on. And so I flaked out and did the easy thing, which is pretty much that. Get that in there. That's not gonna be too horrid. I'm as done as I'm gonna get on the interior. There is nothing great about that interior. Actually, maybe the steering wheel's pretty good. The dash is not horrible. The gauge cluster is good. The rest of it is cleaner than it used to be, but in really bad shape, but good enough for a driver. So I'm gonna move on. And there's something that I should have done a long time ago, and that is this outside rearview mirror right there. Honestly, I should have removed it with a Louisville Slugger before I even left the seller's house. It's so cheesy and it's falling off. So I'm gonna replace it with a stocker, which means I'm gonna have to take the door panel off. Turns out I did not need to remove the door panel. That was actually really great. I've only owned like 5 of these cars. You'd think I would know that. Looks way better. All right, I'm done for the evening, and the next thing you're gonna see on the Camaro is gonna make the biggest difference yet. Yes, it's time for wheels and tires. I told you that one of the reasons why I bought this thing is because of these weird Kragers with the kickoffs on them, or the knockoffs rather. And they're really cool, but I don't feel like polishing them up. And I thought something else could look better. So here's what I've gone to. This is a Vision wheel, and they call it American Muscle 148 Shift. I've never used them before. You know, my normal would be a Krager SS or a Slot Mag or a Black Steely. I thought I'd go out on a limb here, and I'm not sure how they're gonna look on the car, but we'll find out. This is gonna be a 15x8 with 4.5-inch back spacing for the rear, and the front is a 15x7 with 4.25-inch back spacing. The front tire, a 235/60/15, the rear 275/60/15. This is kind of a maxed out wheel and tire combo for 15s on a bone stock 67 or 68 Camaro. So I'm gonna put them on and hopefully don't have a rubbing problem. I sort of eyeballed this whole thing. Now, the tires that I'm using are the Mickey Thompson Sportsman ST. You may know that I believe that Mickey Thompson is the greatest hot rodder of all time. And one of the things that he did in 1963 was start the Mickey Thompson Tire and Wheel Company. Gene McManus was the chief race car tire designer at Goodyear at the time when Mickey Thompson was setting his land speed records circa 59 in 1960 when he went 406 miles an hour and change, becoming the first American to 400 miles an hour. He worked with Goodyear to make that tire because he was unhappy with Firestone that he had run before. Mickey also worked with Gene McManus on his Indy racing program starting around 1963. That was when Mickey introduced the short but fat tire to the Indy 500. And that's why the Mickey Thompson tires were called Indy Profile for so long, because he sort of popularized that 60 series, 50 series short wide tire that ended up on muscle cars. And so that's sort of the legacy of where Mickey Thompson tires came from. And it's just one of my favorite parts of the story, which is part of the reason why I got the Mickey Thompsons. These are going to be the perfect tire for your typical cruise around muscle car on 15s. And you know, that's like right in my wheelhouse, pun intended. So let's throw these things on the Camaro and see if they fit. Wheels and tires are on. Let's go see how it drives and get a better look at the overall vibe. I've been driving the Camaro for, I don't know, 2 or 3 miles now, and I have to say I'm surprised, but it rides smoother. I didn't really see that coming, but the old tires were pretty old. Maybe they were also hard or something, but these are smoother. However, coming away from a stop sign like I just did, I have to admit it's not quite as peppy. The rear tires are much taller than my old ones, and that reduces the effective gear ratio. In other words, it's like making it a higher rear end ratio by putting on taller tires so it doesn't accelerate quite as well from a stop. It should cruise at a lower RPM on the highway. Well, it will cruise at a lower RPM on the highway with taller rear tires. So, I don't know, maybe the mileage will improve. I really feel this thing is a 20 mile per gallon cruiser. I've had these engines before, and that's usually what it is. You know, I shot a couple of videos on this car a little bit out of order, and not to blow a secret, not a spoiler alert here, but I do have an upcoming episode where I take the thing to the track, and I will reveal the ET, in case you want to tune out for a moment. It ran 1854 at 72 miles an hour. That was on the old tires though, so it could be slower now. The inline six is not fast, but it is not undrivably slow. You don't get in this car and go, oh man, this thing is such a dog, I can't even get into traffic or anything like that. I haven't had a speck of tire rub yet, but what I'm gonna do is try and execute a U-turn, find out if they're actually gonna rub on the front end. The back, I think I'm solid on. The front is the question mark. Okay, let's do a U-ey here and see how it goes. All the way cranked, no rubbing. Let's do it again. This time I'm gonna make sure it's all the way cranked. Oh, just a tiny bit of rub at full crank. Let me try that again. Fully crank it. They rub just the tiniest bit at all the way on the lock. Let's hop out and decide how we like the new wheel and tire combo. How's the fit? How's the style? How's the panache? Well, here it is. The thing is, reviews on wheels and tires are super subjective, but I'm gonna give you my opinion. You can comment on yours right there in the comments and let me know what you think here. So once again, this is that Vision American Muscle Shift 148 wheel. I'm gonna say they looked a little bit better in photos than they do in person. My issue with them is that they just look a little bit like an OE takeoff, maybe from the 90s. I don't know why I have that vibe to it, Maybe I'm wrong, let me know. Another issue is that the 15x7 is a little bit flat in the face. When you go back to the 15x8, it's got a little bit more dish to it. It seems a little bit cooler. So while I'm calling these okay, I don't think they're super awesome. But the problem is, once again, I always go to the Krager, the Dish Mag, or the Black Steely. Maybe these are better for the rest of the world. Let me know. The 235 60/15 and the 275, I think it's the right size tire. They do rub just a hair at full left-hand lock in the front, and coming in that driveway, they do skid the inner fender well just a hair. And again, to me, that's not a big deal. That's the price you pay for the hot rod. Here's the huge problem that you've probably noticed already. This thing sits way too high in the front. I don't know, I think the Camaros came this way from the factory. I don't know why they're always tail draggers or nose high. There's a possibility, because so many parts have been maintained on this car, that the front springs have been changed to small block springs and it simply just sits too high in the front. I mean, it's way too high by like 2 inches. So that's the next thing I'm gonna have to address, because you wouldn't want to drive around with a big 4x4 looking Camaro like this, would you? Bam! The Camaro has been lowered. I admit I didn't do it myself. I was running out of time before the sweepstakes began, so I had my guys do it. They installed some BMR lowering springs that are supposed to bring it down 2 inches with a V8. This thing has a 6-cylinder, so not as much weight on the nose, so it only dropped it about 1 inch, but honestly, it already looks better. The fender gaps are about the same front and back. Now, I'd really prefer it was down another 2 inches in the front, maybe 1 in the back. That would give it the stance, but I can live with it. And honestly, it drives great. They gave it an alignment, so it's better than ever. And I even like the wheels better now. So what do you think? Is it good enough for you to win? As a reminder, if it's between October 25th and December 9th, 2024, you can enter for a chance to win this car, my personal 1968 Camaro. Just go to my website. It's shop.davidfreiburger.com. I'm gonna put the link in the description and another one right here. So check that out, and who knows, maybe you'll be driving this thing home. And let me know, what do you think of the instant makeover on this Camaro? To me, it's pretty mint.